Hello everyone, I am your educator Arya. Welcome to Arpita Sharma classes. Today we are starting the course on Environment and Ecology for UPSC CSE. In this course, we will discuss important topics on environment and ecology on UPSC CSE 2020, 2021 and 2022 perspective. This is a crash course. Okay, before we start, here is a small announcement. Subscribe to Arpita Sharma classes for daily news analysis, economic MCQ series, Indian polity classes, strategy related classes for UPSC CSE and much more. You can also join our Telegram channel Simplifying UPSC with Ease for class updates and notes. Also, Arpita ma'am is taking live classes on Unacademy Plus. You can use Sharma20 to get 10% discount. So let's get started with the second session of this crash course. Yesterday was International Day for Biological Diversity. International Day for Biological Diversity is a United Nations sanctioned international day for the promotion of biodiversity issues. It is currently held on May 22nd and the theme for 2020 was Our Solutions Are in Nature. Now let's discuss the components of ecosystem. What are the components of ecosystem? Ecosystem consists of abiotic components and biotic components. So we will discuss abiotic components. Abiotic components are non-living things. First one is energy. Sun supplies the direct energy. Okay, sun directly supplies the necessary energy for the ecosystem. Since animals cannot use solar energy directly, they obtain it indirectly by eating plants or animals or both. And this energy determines the distribution of organisms in the environment. Second one is rainfall. Water is essential for all living beings, right? It helps to regulate the body temperature. And water bodies form the habitat for many aquatic plants and animals. So water is an important abiotic component in the ecosystem. Third one is temperature. Temperature influences the survival of organisms. Organisms can tolerate only a certain range of temperature and humidity. We can survive only a certain range of temperature and humidity, not every range. Fourth one, D. Atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere is responsible for creating conditions suitable for the existence of a healthy biosphere on this planet. So Earth's atmosphere is responsible for creating the conditions which are suitable for the existence of the healthy biosphere on this planet. Substratum. Land is what is substratum? Land is covered by soil and a wide variety of microbes, protozoa, fungi and small animals, invertebrates thrive in it. This is called substratum. Roots of plants pierce through the soil to absorb water and nutrients. Organisms can be terrestrial or aquatic. These organisms can be terrestrial or aquatic organisms. Terrestrial, and what are terrestrial animals? They live on land, and aquatic plants, animals and microbes live in fresh water as well as in the sea. Some microbes live even in hot water under the sea. Next is materials. Organic compounds such as proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, humic substances are formed inorganic compound on decomposition. Formed from inorganic compound on decomposition. So organic compounds like proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, humic substances are formed from inorganic compounds. Inorganic compounds such as carbon dioxide, water, sulfur, nitrates, phosphates and ions of various metals are essential for organisms to survive. So organic compounds are formed from inorganic compounds, and inorganic compounds such as carbon dioxide, water, sulfur, nitrate, phosphates and ions of various metals are essential for the organism to survive. So both organic compounds and inorganic compounds are necessary for the organism to survive. Next is latitude and altitude. Latitude has a strong influence on an area's temperature, resulting in change of climate such as polar, tropical and temperate. Latitude influences an area on temperature, right, resulting in the changes of climate. Climate changes will occur in like polar climate, tropical climate and temperate climate. These climates determine different natural biomes from sea level to highest peaks. Wildlife is influenced by altitude. Altitude also influences wildlife. As altitude increases, the air becomes colder and drier, affecting wildlife accordingly. As altitude increases, air becomes colder and it will become drier and it affects the wildlife accordingly. Next we will discuss biotic components. Living organisms comprising plants, animals and microbes are called biotic components. So, biotic components are simply living organisms. First one is primary producers. Primary producers are also known as autotrophs. What are primary producers? They are basically green plants. So, they are basically green plants and certain bacteria and algae also. And they produce food by the process known as photosynthesis. We all know about it, right? Herbaceous or woody plants in terrestrial ecosystem and microscopic algae in aquatic system are primary producers. In terrestrial ecosystem, herbaceous or woody plants are the primary producers, and in aquatic ecosystem, microscopic algae are the primary producers. Next is consumers. Consumers are also known as heterotrophs or phagotrophs. Consumers are incapable of producing their own food. So consumers don't produce their own food by the process of photosynthesis. How they will get the food? They will get food or they depend on organic food derived from plants, animals or both. Consumers can be divided into two broad groups, namely micro and macro consumers. So there are two types of consumers, macro consumers and micro consumers. Macro consumers. They feed on plants or animals or both and are categorized on the basis of their food sources. So, macro consumers feed both plants and animals and are categorized and are divided on the basis of what is their food. Herbivores are primary consumers which feed mainly on plants. Example, cow, rabbit. Herbivores are primary consumers and they feed mainly plants. Secondary consumers feed on primary consumers, foods. Secondary consumers feed these primary consumers. Carnivores which feed on secondary consumers are called tertiary consumers. So the carnivores which feed the secondary consumers are known as tertiary consumers. Example, lion which can eat foods. Omnivores are the organisms which consume both plants and animals. Example, man and monkey. Omnivores which will consume both plants and animals. Next is micro consumers. Micro consumers are saprotrophs, decomposers or osmotrophs. They are bacteria and fungi which obtain energy and nutrients by decomposing dead organic matter, detritus of plant and animal origin. So, micro consumers are basically bacteria and fungi and it obtain energy and nutrients by decomposing the dead organic substances, detritus of plant and animal origin. The products of decomposition such as inorganic nutrients which are released in the ecosystem are reused by producers and thus recycled. So the inorganic nutrients which are produced by this decomposition are released in the ecosystem and are reused by producers and thus recycled. Earthworm and certain soil organisms such as nematodes, arthropods are detritus feeders and help in the decomposition of organic matter and are called detritivores. Earthworm and certain soil organisms are detritus feeders. They will feed on this detritus or dead organic matter and help in the decomposition of organic matter and are called detritivores. It helps in the decomposition of this organic matter. So it is called detritivores. So next we will discuss some goods and services provided by ecosystem. Provision of food, fuel and fiber. Ecosystem will provide food, fuel and fiber. Provision of shelter and building materials. Ecosystem also provides provision for shelter and building materials. Purification of air and water. Okay, by the process of photosynthesis and various other processes, purification is done. Detoxification and decomposition of waste. Detoxification or decomposition of waste will occur. Stabilization and moderation of Earth's climate. Earth's climate is moderated by this ecosystem. Moderation of floods, droughts, temperate extremes and the sources of wind. Flood, drought and temperature extremes are moderated. Generation and renewal of soil fertility, including nutrient cycling. Nutrient cycling is done. Pollination of plants, including many crops. Control of pests and diseases. This is also done by ecosystem. Now, classification of ecosystem. Ecosystem is classified into two, terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. Terrestrial ecosystem consists of forest, grassland and desert, and aquatic ecosystem consists of freshwater, saline water and marine water. So this is the classification of a natural ecosystem. Next we will discuss sulfur cycle. Sulfur cycle is an important one. Sulfur is formed in the earth or soil by the weathering of rocks. So rocks contain sulfur. So due to weathering, this sulfur is released into the earth or soil, and plants will absorb this sulfur in the form of sulfates. Animals will consume these plants and they will get this sulfur or sulfate ions in organic form. And after the death of these animals or after the decaying of these animals, it will go again into soil. So this is sulfur cycle. First sulfate salt, then plants, then animals, decaying matter, again sulfate, sulfur, sulfate salt, plants, animals. Also volcanic eruption and precipitation. Due to precipitation, sulfur is entered into Earth's surface or soil. This is sulfur cycle. At first, the sulfur is released by the weathering of rocks, and this sulfur comes in contact with the air and it is converted into sulfate. These sulfates are taken up by plants and microbes and are converted into organic forms. The organic form of sulfur is then consumed by the animals through their food, and this sulfur moves in the food chain. When the animals die, some of the sulfur is released by the decomposition, while some enter the tissues of microbes. There are several natural sources such as volcanic eruptions, evaporation of water, and breakdown of organic matter in swamps that release sulfur directly into the atmosphere. So, sulfur is also directly entered into the atmosphere through volcanic eruptions, evaporation of water, breakdown of organic matter in swamps, and the release of sulfur directly in the atmosphere. This sulfur falls on the earth with rainfall, and this enter on the earth with rainfall. So this is sulfur cycle. So now we will discuss some important MCQs. First one, in India, the problem of soil erosion is associated with which of the following? 1. Terrace cultivation. 2. Deforestation. 3. Tropical climate. Select the correct answer using the code given below. A. 1 and 2 only. B. 2 only. C. 1 and 3 only. And D. 1, 2 and 3. So which is the correct answer? The correct answer is option B, 2 only, which is deforestation. Third question. With reference to eco-sensitive zones, which of the following statements is or are correct? Which of the following statements is or are correct? Eco-sensitive zones are the areas that are declared under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Second statement. The purpose of the declaration of eco-sensitive zones is to prohibit all kinds of human activities in those zones except agriculture. Select the correct answer using the code given below. A. 1 only, B. 2 only, C. both 1 and 2, and D. neither 1 nor 2. The correct answer is option D, neither 1 nor 2. Both the statements are wrong. What are eco-sensitive zones? Eco-sensitive zones are basically buffer zones. Okay. Eco-sensitive zones are ecologically fragile areas and are areas within 10 kilometers around protected areas, national park and wildlife sanctuary. It is an area around 10 kilometers of protected areas, national parks and wildlife sanctuary. So it is a buffer area. And ESZs are notified by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change notifies this eco-sensitive zones. Government of India under Environment Protection Act 1986. So the act is Environment Protection Act 1986. In case of places with the sensitive corridors, connectivity and ecologically important patches crucial for landscape linkage, even area beyond 10 km width can also be included in this eco-sensitive zone. So if the places are with sensitive corridors, the connectivity and ecologically important patches crucial for landscape linkage, even area beyond 10 km width can also be included in eco-sensitive zone. At first we said areas within 10 kilometers around protected areas. Now even area beyond 10 km width can also be included in the eco-sensitive zone if the places with the sensitive corridors, in case of places with the sensitive corridors, connectivity and ecologically important patches crucial for landscape linkage. So if the place is with a sensitive corridor, even area beyond 10 km width can also be included in the eco-sensitive zone. The basic aim is to regulate certain activities around national parks or wildlife sanctuaries so as to minimize the negative impacts of such activities on the fragile ecosystem encompassing the protected area. So the main aim is to minimize the negative impact of some activities on the fragile ecosystem. So these are the prohibited activities: commercial mining, sawmills, industries causing pollution, air, water, soil, noise, etc. Establishment of major hydroelectric projects, commercial use of wood, tourism activities like hot air balloons over the national park, discharge of effluents or any solid waste or production of hazardous substances. These are the prohibited activities. Now regulated activities. Regulated activities are felling of trees, establishment of hotels, resorts, commercial use of natural water, erection of electrical cables, drastic change of agricultural system, example adoption of heavy technology, pesticides, etc., widening of roads. Permitted activities are ongoing agricultural or horticultural practices, rainwater harvesting, organic farming, use of renewable energy source, adoption of green technology for all activities. So these are the permitted activities, not only agriculture, ongoing agriculture or horticultural practices, rainwater harvesting, organic farming, use of renewable energy sources, adoption of green technology are also permitted. Okay. So now next question. Which of the following are some important pollutants released by steel industry in India? First one, oxides of sulfur. Second one, oxides of nitrogen. Third one, carbon monoxide. And fourth one, carbon dioxide. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1, 3 and 4 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 4 only, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So which is the correct answer? The correct answer is D, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Next question. With reference to two non-conventional energy sources such as coal-bed methane and shale gas, consider the following statements. Coal-bed methane is the pure methane gas extracted from coal seams, while shale gas is a mixture of propane and butane only that can be extracted from fine-grained sedimentary rocks. Second statement. In India, abundant coal-bed methane sources exist, but so far no shale gas sources have been found. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? A 1 only, B 2 only, C both 1 and 2, and D neither 1 nor 2. So which is the correct answer? The correct answer is D, neither 1 nor 2. Coal-bed methane is an unconventional form of natural gas found in coal deposits or coal seams. Coal-bed methane is formed during the process of coalification The transformation of plant material into coal. India has fifth largest coal reserve in the world. Coal-bed methane is an unconventional form of natural gas. It is a natural gas and it is found in coal deposits or coal seams. And this coal-bed methane is formed during the process of coalification. The transformation of plant material into coal is known as coalification, and India has the fifth largest reserve in the world. Shale gas is an unconventional natural resource. It is found at 2500 to 5000 meters below the Earth's surface. It is deeper in comparison to conventional crude oil found at 1500 meters. As per the US EIA 2015 report, India has got technically recoverable shale gas of 96 trillion cubic feet. The recoverable reserves are identified in Campe, Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri, Damodar Valley, Upper Assam, Pranahita, Godavari, Rajasthan and Vindhya basin. So these are the places where these deposits of shale gas is found. In India, cluster bean, guar, is traditionally used as vegetable or animal feed, but recently the cultivation of this has assumed significance. Which of the following statement is correct in this context? A. The oil is extracted from seeds, is used in the manufacture of biodegradable plastics. B. The gun made from its seeds is used in the extraction of shale gas. C. The leaf extract on this plant has the properties of antihistamines. D. It is a source of high quality biodiesel. So which is the correct answer? The correct answer is B. The gun made from its seed is used in the extraction of shale gas. So this was all for today's class. Thank you and have a nice day.